please.
We're hearing private member statements. Are there any? I call the member for Newtown.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak on an area in my electorate that is under threat, an area that is very much valued by the community, holds significance both in terms of our historical past but also our present day and our future. That is the Australian Technology Park and Eveleigh Carriage Works precinct that sits at the heart of the crossover between the wonderful suburbs of Redfern, Eveleigh, Alexandria, Darlington and Erskineville. The New South Wales Government announced plans to privatise this site, to sell off this site, at the same time that urban growth was seeking to consult the community on plans for the Central to Eveleigh corridor. And the expectation is that an announcement on the successful bid for the privatisation of this site is imminent. But I'd like to focus today a little bit on the history and the significance of the Australian Technology Park site and what it means for the community that lives in that area. Let me begin briefly with the history. Construction of the yards commenced in 1884 and the first workshop opened in 1887. The manufacture of locomotives commenced in 1907 with the extensive new locomotive workshop opened in that same year. The site continued to grow and expand throughout the 20th century until the advent of diesel locomotives in the mid-1960s. Manufacturing and repairs eventually ceased on the site in the mid-1980s and it was converted to the existing public use as the Australian Technology Park in 2009. It is a rich history that closely links the innovation of the past with the current innovation of the present and the future. The Australian Technology Park was once the site of Australia's largest industrial complex, the Eveleigh Railway Workshops. The site has been recognised both nationally and internationally for its heritage significance. And the site is equally as important for its social and industrial history, being the site of important struggles for historic working conditions, including the work-free weekends, amenities and fair pay. The Greens have stood committed to and objected to the idea of privatising of this site since it was first announced, and we will continue to do whatever is possible to make sure that this important heritage site is preserved and remains accessible to the local community. We need to be seeing creative ideas that improve public assets, not privatisation of valuable public resources. Preserving Sydney's rail heritage should be a priority. Heritage should be seen as a living thing, not just about locking places up for the uber wealthy to access or private companies to use, but also about communities being able to access green space and open space and be a part of that living heritage. We know that people that live around this area have almost no green space left. It is a high density area, and now we're being told that this area is potentially going to be locking out the community from our beautiful industrial sites that have been part of our lives for many years. It's not just the Greens that have been strongly opposed to the sell-off of the Australian Technology Park. There has been strong community opposition to this privatisation from Redwatch, Alexandria Residents Action Group, the Friends of Erskineville, as well as a whole lot of start-up companies who have started a petition where thousands of people have signed on to save the Australian Technology Park site as a technology hub. We've seen the former founder, CEO of the ATP, Tom Forgan, come out in support, and Stan Jeffrey, the founding director of ATP Innovations, also come out in support of maintaining this important site as a technology hub. The City of Sydney's report has found that there's been a number of risks in the privatisation and concerns around the expressions of interest process and the lack of transparency here. It was a pleasure that I was able to visit the site and be taken on a tour recently by Brian Dunnett, where I visited Guido, the blacksmith, and saw the working blacksmith within the carriage works, within the rail yards, but also got to speak to a number of the tenants in the innovation and technology hub areas that are key to making this site work. What we know and what is clear from the forum that was held earlier this year, where speakers including Jeff Turnbull from Redwatch, Lucy Taxer, who is a professor and has written extensively about the Eveleigh workshops, Dick Butcher, who spoke as an apprentice welder in 1956 and became the chief engineer and welding inspector in Eveleigh, Peter Tighe, who was the former National Secretary of the ETU, and Mark Buttigieg, who also spoke as a state organiser with the ETU, as well as Brian, that this site holds significance, not just for our rail heritage, but for our working and industrial heritage in Sydney. And that's why it needs to be protected. This week we will see Urban Growth hold a consultation about the North Eveleigh site in our community. We are not seeing talk of affordable housing targets. What we are seeing is talk of 20-storey buildings in this area. We are not seeing talk of more open and green space. What we are seeing is talk of more density without support. We know that this community can stand together and win. We've seen the interruption to the Alexandria Hotel demolition plans, and this community will come together and call on the government to cancel plans to privatise the ATP site and keep it in public hands.
I am a little generous with the newer members, but of course they'll take more of a note of their word count in the future. We're hearing public